Hey guys, Dark Skeleton here again. I decided that the last video was getting a bit long, so we're going to finish up the League of Explorers card review here, continuing with the Dark Peddler, which this is a 2-mana, 2/2 for Warlocks, Battle Cry, discover a 1-cost card, which is interesting, because by playing a 2-cost minion, you're getting a good card that would have been a good one-turn play, or turn 1 play rather. Kind of like a 2/2 draw card, which is similar to, say, a Loot Hoarder, but it's a little bit better, and a little bit worse at the same time. Better, because you know exactly more or less what you're going to get, because you get to choose one of 3 1-drops. Or worse, in that the 1-drop is really low mana curve, and you may have preferred something like a big 3-drop like an Imp King boss at that point in time. Is Dark Peddler actually good? It depends. I think in a deck where you want to be playing a lot of one-drop decks and you're just really desperate for card draw, it could actually be pretty decent. Kind of makes me think, like, hey, the Reliquary Seeker over there, like, okay, you just play 7 1-drops and then you Reliquary Seeker, or 6 1-drops and then you Reliquary Seeker. Maybe, like some kind of hyper-aggressive zoo deck. Yeah, I mean, it could be something like that. We'd have to see. 2/2 stats is a little bit weak. You gotta keep that in mind. Like, let's see, the Cut Purse, 2-mana, 2/2 rogue minion. When you attack your opponent's face, you get to draw a free coin. And that's, I mean, there was like one deck that someone put together which was kind of good with it, but you don't really see it in competitive play. So I don't know about this. We'll have to see. I'm kind of on the edge about it. I mean, would you say that's as good as like a mad scientist? No, because you still have to play the 1-drop. I think it's on the edge of being good or the edge of being mediocre. Pretty good in Arena, though, at least, because you'll get a basically a free card draw. Okay, next up, Cursed Blade. 1-mana, 2/3 warrior weapon. Is this good? I don't think so, because you double all damage dealt to your hero, which means you swing at an opponent's minion. Let's say it's a Lepinome. Congratulations, you just took 4 damage plus 2 for the death rattle. No, wait, that's 8 damage, because the death rattle effect is doubled as well. You're trying to use this to clear opponent's minions. Like, you swing at, let's say, a weakened mana worm. You're still going to take so much damage. I mean, those things get up to, like, what, 3-4 power if they're left unchecked for a turn? And then you just take double that? Warriors tend to have a lot of HP, and health is definitely a resource for them. But is it really worth doubling it just to basically have a 1-mana cheaper, what's effectively like a fiery war axe? Whether the +1 durability or the +1 damage is better is kind of debatable. I think, though, would people be on the edge of saying the damage is better? I kind of think so. The damage just helps you answer more. Now, is this going to be played out? I think it's sketchy. I don't think it's as good as Fiery War Axe, and I don't think it's as good as Death's Bite, and I think there's only so many slots you want to dedicate to specifically weapons inside of a warrior deck, so I don't think this will make the cut in many cases. Though, one interesting option is to use this purely for damage, or in a more aggressive deck. I mean, you could trade like into 1 minion and then use it to hit your opponent's face twice. But then if it's a liability, like, you might be a face deck, but what happens if they end up rushing you down even faster because you were playing this? So I don't really see where it fits in. Control warriors don't really want to take damage for nothing, and face warriors want their opponent to be on the defensive, not the face warrior on the defensive. Okay, next up, Obsidian Destroyer. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Scarab with Taunt. Sort of like a Dr. Boom. Kinda. It's not as good as Dr. Boom because, I mean, if anybody thinks this is a real threat, they're just going to destroy it. It's BGHable. Though, I mean, kind of like a Hogger, it does have the potential to kind of scale out of control, can block a lot of big minions if it gets to that point where it's just everybody only has cards like Alex Draza or Gramash Hellscream. Because it is a 1/1 with Taunt. Though, personally, I feel that a 1/1 with the Death Rattle of dealing 1 to 4 damage to a random enemy is way better than having Taunt, and Dr. Boom gives you 2 of those right off the bat, which I think is better than the potential to get 3 or 4 if it lives for a few turns, because, let's face it, this is Hearthstone. The minions, if they're remotely a threat, aren't going to last that long, or if they do, you've already won. So it's a okay common. Um, kind of like helps people who don't have all the good cards out. Well, in a way, yes, but it's not like a common from another set like GVG, like Piloted Shredder, because all of the League of Explorers cards, you basically just get them if you do all the missions. It's not a common where you have to open it in a pack. It's a common you just guaranteed to get if you finish a certain mission. Um, that said, it's not bad. I just don't know if it's going to be viable. It doesn't feel strong enough for its mana cost, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And maybe you just play this in a late game deck as Dr. Boom and this. I mean, free taunts are actually not too bad. One thought that comes to mind is buffing up that Taunt Warrior deck that uses the bolster mechanic. The Scarab lives, you bolster it next turn, suddenly it's a free 3/3. And that's not too shabby. And speaking of the bolster taunt deck, Fierce Monkey, a 3/4 with taunt, also a beast for 3 mana. Clearly, I prefer a defensive warrior deck or one that's playing the bolstered taunt buff. It's pretty solid. A 3/4 taunt for 3 mana is pretty good. I mean, even if you're not playing bolster, that's still pretty good. It can block a lot of damage. Your opponent has to swing into it. They don't want to silence a 3 mana taunt because you might have a Sludge Belcher later on, and if you silence one minion, you don't have the silence for the other minion. So just looking at that, it's a really solid minion, actually. I think Warriors will still be playing cards like Acolyte of Pain, but if you need to hold the board earlier on, this helps a lot with that and can help bring a Control Warrior or a Taunt Warrior into the later stages more easily. So yeah, good stats, good effect for it being a 4 health minion. Probably is going to see some play. It may actually be a competitive card, actually. We'll have to see how that goes. Will the bolster come back and make a new meta with cards like Fierce Monkey? Hard to say, but I do like that card. It's solid. Okay, we can get to the neutral cards now. There's going to be 5 legendaries. Looks like 2 epics, a bunch of rares, and a bunch of commons, as well as a few tokens. Now, yes, the tokens, you'll notice 3 of them are 10 mana. They are kind of crazy, even the 4 mana Golden Monkey, which you may have seen if you were watching BlizzCon. But we'll get to that in due time. So, Archthief Reform. Battle Cry, discover a powerful artifact. 7/8 for 9 mana, crappy stats, but you're playing those big cards for the effect. Now, what is the effect? I guess we're going to the tokens sooner than I thought. Lantern of Power is one of the 3 options, because you're discovering a powerful artifact, so you get 3 options. Lantern of Power, 10 mana, +10/+10 to a minion. You can think of it as an Ember version of Blessing of Kings. The way I think of it, if Archthief Reform lives for a turn and you go with this one, then your next turn is 17 damage to the face. Hey, that's actually kind of crazy. It does require you to use 2 turns. Is it good enough to kind of rely on that to make that sort of play? I don't know. I mean, you still do have to play 10 mana. The problem is you gotta find the moment where you have 10 mana to spend. You play these cards, and that's all you can do for the turn. I think in some situations it can be good, especially if you think your opponent isn't going to be able to clear your board, because that's basically going to be guaranteed 10 extra damage to your opponent's face, which is as good, well, better than a Pyroblast, because it's still going to make the minion enormous. Okay, Mirror of Doom. Fill your board with 3/3 mummy zombies. It kind of makes me think Bridge from Below or Dredge decks in Magic the Gathering, which rely on the graveyard being full of random crap, and then you just summon a million zombies and swing for 1 billion damage, and you win. This is kind of like that. 10 mana. If you have an empty board, this gets you 21/21 of stats, all 3/3 mummy zombies. Really weak to 3 damage AoE, of which 3 damage AoE. I mean, there's Flame Strike, which is 4 damage 3 AoE. Is there actually a 3 damage AoE in the game? I think there is one from one of the classes. Kind of escapes my mind. Blade Flurry, of course, would wreck this as well, but that's a lot of stats. That's like more than Onyxia stats. Onyxia gets you an 8/8 and then 6/1/1s, which is 14/14 for 9 mana. I'd say this is probably better than Onyxia in most cases. It depends if your opponent has the Flame Strike or not. I like Onyxia specifically because they have to have two kinds of answers, one to deal with a big minion and then one to deal with a bunch of dudes on the board. The weakness of this is that they're all the same, so you need one good answer. Equality Consecrate, also an option. But yeah, if they fail to answer this, they pretty much are screwed. 21 of stats, insane. Now the last artifact, I kind of feel in most cases this is probably the weakest one. Timepiece of Horror. It's a 10 mana, deal 10 damage, randomly split among all enemies, kind of like the 6 mana spell Avenging Wrath, which is 6 mana, deal 8 damage. This is the best one if both players have no minions on the board, which isn't likely in many cases. Or you could also use it when it gets to fatigue and everybody's out of minions. You could also kind of use it as a board clear to an extent, kind of like a crappy Flame Strike or a really expensive Avenging Wrath. All three of these are pretty decent in the potential area where you actually have the ability to play it. The downside is always it's 10 mana. It takes up your entire turn, and you have to preemptively choose which one is going to be the one you need. So you have to have some kind of foresight there. But, I mean, in terms of pure power, yeah, this is actually a strong card, but it's 19 mana to play both of them effectively. So if you're going to be playing really slow control, maybe good. I don't know if it's going to be viable, but it's fun. People will play around with it, definitely. Okay, Meno Jackson might be my favorite card from the whole set. Battle Cry. If your deck contains no more than one of any card, fully heal your hero. 4/6 mana minion. Now, when it comes to full heal effects, there's only one author in the game, and it does it for both players. It's 9 mana, it's a spell, and it's Tree of Life. Now, there's no requirement there, but Meno Jackson comes with that effect for only your hero, and on top of that, you get a nice 4/6 minion, which isn't too shabby. I mean, that's about what you pay 5 mana for, and then you just play one more mana to heal yourself to full. Insane. The problem is, you'd have to be playing either a deck that's kind of built around him, where you only have one of each copy of a card in the deck, which is getting more and more possible. As they add in more cards to the game, there's going to be more and more good options that are almost viable, but get cut out of the deck. So, you got to figure out, is it worth playing, like instead of 2 copies of Polymorph, a copy of Polymorph Boar and Polymorph, but doing that kind of thing for most, if not all, your cards in order to make Meno Jackson trigger. Other option is you play LC Starseeker in your deck, which is a 4 mana, 3/5. Shuffle the Map of the Golden Monkey into your deck. And what the Map of the Golden Monkey does is when you play it, you shuffle the Golden Monkey into your deck. And then you also draw a card, and that's 2 mana. And then when you finally get the Golden Monkey, which playing this means 10 mana for all of those. Of course, LC Starseeker, remember, still a 3/5, which is reasonable, is a 4 mana 6/6, and then replaces your deck in your hand with legendary minions. And, well, actually, I'm not sure that legendary minions means unique legendary minions, so maybe it doesn't work like I think it does. But with this, legendary cards tend to be really high-end. And let's say you built a deck that's about getting to the point where you can actually find this Map of the Golden Monkey, like a draw deck. Then you get it, you play it, and then when you finally have it, the last 10 cards you draw are going to carry you to victory in the game, because half of them are going to be cards like Ragnaros or Sylvanas, in theory. And a 6/6 Taunt is actually really good for 4 mana as well. That's not something to sneeze at. Problem is, you gotta get all 3 of those cards. You gotta draw and play LC Starseeker, then you gotta get the map and play that, and then you get the draw card, but then you also have to play the Golden Monkey as well. Hard to say. Well, is it really that hard to say? I think it's way too situational. Like, 1 out of 20 games you might be able to pull it off. Are you willing to sacrifice a little bit of stats, like 1 mana off of a Chillwind Yeti, in order to get this Map of the Golden Monkey and the Golden Monkey later on? I think it's a fun card. I don't think it's going to be played too much because it's just really, really inconsistent. It's about as inconsistent as you can get in this game, and if there's anything that you should pick up on for winning, It's the consistent win rates are important if you want to get to high ranks. Okay, Brand Bronzebeard. Oh, one thing I should mention about LC Starseeker. This is basically putting 2 extra cards in your deck. Well, 1.5. The draw card and then a 6/6 taunt. So, fatigue potential? Yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. Okay, Brand Bronzebeard. 3 mana, 2/4. Your battle cries trigger twice. Which is a lot like the 4 mana minion Baron Rivendare, 1/7, your Death Rattle minions trigger twice. I think, honestly, a 2/4 for 3 mana is better than a 1/7 for 4 mana. Debatable, but I would kind of lean that way. Battlecry effects. A lot of them are really good, like Fire Elemental, getting to do 2 of those, and you can actually play Brand Bronzebeard when you have the Battlecry effects ready. You don't have to wait for the Death Rattle effects to be on the field and live a turn like Baron Rivendare does. You just can use Brand Bronzebeard as a combo piece, which means he's good with Emperor Tharzan, double the Fire Elemental effect, double, what else has Battlecry? Well, you want to use it with Meno Jackson. Okay, well, I can't really think of them right now, but there's a lot of good battle cries in the game, and if you want to build a battle cry deck, he's the card for you, definitely. Card that, once I get him, I will probably practice or play around with a bit. Remember, though, battle cry and combo are 2 separate things, so it's not as good as you might think in a rogue deck. SI7 Agent doesn't get to trigger twice, sorry. It sucks, but yeah, that's not going to be a thing. Okay, final legendary for the set. Surfin McGurgleton. Battle Guy. Discover a new hero power. He's a 1 mana, 1/3 Murloc, which is good for anti-aggro, I guess. Discovering a new basic hero power. That means you can't just get one of those crazy ones, like let's say the Major Domo Ragnaros hero power deal 8 damage. No, it means they're going to be basically getting Rogue Daggers, Mage hero power ping, Shaman Totems, Paladin hero power. Is it actually good? You know, what you gotta ask yourself is, how many situations are there where you really want to swap hero powers because the hero power that you had and kind of built your deck around isn't good anymore? And to that, I really gotta wonder. Like, okay, maybe you think like Handlock. You're about to get to fatigue, so the hero power has become pointless, and then you can trade it for Mage hero power ping. Do you want to wait till turn 20 to basically play a 1/3 Murloc, though? And do you even want a 1/3 Murloc in your Handlock deck? I don't think that would be a thing. Do you want totems in a Mage? Maybe. Or maybe you want the Dude Creator. I kind of gotta ask, it's like, which is the worst hero power? Which is the worst hero power for the kind of deck you're trying to play? I think what comes to mind is Hunter, and not because the Hunter hero power is bad, but that it's bad for control. You can try to like use the Goblin Sniper Dude, the 2 mana 2/3, to use your hero power to target minions, but that is really iffy. It's not that consistent, and it's a slow play too. But if you wanted to play a Control Hunter, you turn 1, Surfin McGurgleton, switch your hero power to Totems, switch your hero power to Mage hero power ping, and then suddenly, for 1 mana, you actually get a decent minion, a 1/3, which is great against aggro decks, and you get a hero power which is going to be much more useful to you. So I think in Hunter, Surfin McGurgleton would actually be pretty good. I might use him for a Control Hunter deck. It's like, I'm going to play a Hunter for none of the reasons that Hunter exists. It's like, go face with Hunter? Nope. I'm a Shaman now, I guess. But yeah, if you can think of weird circumstances like that, or maybe you want to use it to get the Hunter's hero power because you're playing like an aggressive Paladin deck or something, and you're at the point in the game where you can't get past their taunts and you're just looking for face damage. Suddenly, Paladin gets a new way to deal direct damage. It's an option. And remember, Murloc Paladin is probably a lot better than other classes. He is a Murloc, so you can play it in a Murloc deck. A 1/3 Murloc is actually decent. Okay, the Gnie of Zephyrs. Whenever you cast a spell on a friendly minion, cast a copy of it on this one. So, as a 4/6 for 5 mana, that's fine. That's average stats. But you start playing cards like, say, Chosen of Felon, which is +2/+4 to a minion and then +1 spell damage. Suddenly you double that effect and it becomes insane. You play Power Word Shield. Suddenly Power Word Shield suddenly gets 2 card draws and +4 health in total, because it's cast another copy, not copy the effect. So yeah, with Priest actually, wow, getting 2 card draw off Power Word Shield, that is legit. Could see a Prophet Valen de Genie deck. That sounds pretty cool to me actually. And the thing about that is it keeps that up BGH range. It would become a 6/10, which is a great minion to avoid BGH and still stomp stuff on the field. Pretty good card, especially, you know, you can also throw in the Valkyrs. You want to play a buff deck? This is another card that kind of pushes buff decks into viability, which subsequently also puts Spellbender into being a secret which might eventually be played. Spellbender is just so bad, because it's just so situational. It's like 1 in 100 games you get the best Blessing of King Steel, and then the rest it's irrelevant. Yeah, I like the Genie. Okay. Or the Genie, however you say it. Naga Sea Witch, kind of like a Aviana, which is the 9-mana Druid legendary, except instead of 1 mana being for your minions, your cards cost 5. So you can play this on turn 10, and then after that you can play any card in your hand. So you get 2 cards in the field for 10 mana. Really good if you're going to be playing like a lot of big legendaries. Really bad if you actually intend to play any low-cost spells or minions after this point, because remember, it also boosts your minions up to 5 if they cost less than 5. So this is a late-game card. It's a late-game card which gains you tempo, kind of like playing a 5/5 and then innovating, except without actually having to play the innovate. If your opponent's really smart, they could kill off your big guy, finish off all your big guys, leave this on the field, maybe keep freezing it or something like that with like a water elemental or a frostbolt, and then kind of screw you over because the remaining cards in your hand now cost 5 mana. So you got to be careful with this card, but it's definitely a card which helps slow decks out. So you might see it in a Ramp Druid with Ancients of War. You might see it in a Control Warrior where you play Naga Sea Witch and a Ragnaros or and a Therian Wren. Can be pretty scary. We'll have to see if it actually sees play. But it's got potential. Summoning Stone, 0 mana, 5 mana, 0/6. I wish it was 0 mana. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random minion of the same cost. So this is kind of like Summoning Portal, except instead of making your tempo move fast, being able to play a ton of minions, it makes your spells more beneficial. Like you play a Fireball, and then you get a 4-drop minion on the back of that. And if this survives, which is possible because it has 6 health, it'll become a real issue for your opponent. So this is the kind of card that's good when you're ahead, kind of like a Manatide Totem. Basically, just gives you more free stuff that your opponent is never going to be able to make up for, and forces your opponent to have to respond to it in some way. If they have a Silence, you'll be very sad, and Silence is really popular at the moment. But people probably wouldn't save it for a late game Summoning Stone. They'd probably use it earlier on, like turn 4 or 5, so you might be able to sneak it out. The thing is, it's a win more when you're winning kind of card. Doesn't do anything on its own. So you play this on a field that already has a Dr. Boom on your opponent's side of the field, and it just dies. Great. You just spent 5 mana and a card to basically soak 7 damage. Possibilities would include Defender of Argus, make a 1/7 taunt. Not great stats for 5 mana, but at least it would be able to use that health and, you know, hit a couple weak minions. Other possibilities would include putting it behind like a Death Lord, and then you just abuse your spells as long as possible and get tons of minions out on the field. Also, well, not actually as good with Emperor Tharzan, because it's the cost of the spell, not its base cost. So if you play a 3-mana Fireball, you're going to get a 3-cost minion. I don't think it'll be a viable card, but it's fun to play around with. Could be a thing in Fatigue decks. It's a really, really slow card, and the reason you'd play this is to basically get extra cards effectively to outlast your opponent. That's where this card comes into play. Okay, Oh, one thing that would be worth mentioning, though, is it might force your opponent to overcommit to the board, and then you flame strike them, and they're really sad, because then you get a 7-cost minion, and they lose their whole board. Next up, Eerie Statue. I think this is the card that Handlocks have been waiting for a while. It's a 4-mana 7/7 that can't attack unless it's the only minion on the battlefield, which is actually better than the Ancient Watcher effect, where it can't attack, period. Ancient Watcher is a 2-mana 4/5. This is a 4-mana 7/7. You look at the stats and you think, wow, this would make a really good wall. What if you taunted this up with a Sunfury Protector or a Defender of Argus? I don't know how defensive exactly you want to get in a handlock deck. I'm not a professional handlock player or anything like that, but that's what it makes me think. It makes me think, damn, you could Shadow Flame this thing and it would 8 mana deal 7 damage to your opponent's entire field. Ouch. Make a Defender of Argus it, make it an 8/8 taunt. I mean, even if it gets BGH'd, if you're playing handlock, something's going to get BGH'd anyway, because that deck has more 8 attack minions than anything else in the game. It just seems really good for this slow taunter decks. Another good option is Ancient, no, not Ancient Watcher, Railing Soul. Silences all your own minions. So you silence this, and then it doesn't even have the drawback, and then it just becomes straight out like a 4-mana 7/7. You can also make the situation happen, maybe with Hellfire, where it is actually the only minion on the board, and it gets to attack even without you having to silence it. And 7 damage to the face is quite a bit. Okay, Ancient Shade. Pretty much in the opposite kind of playstyle than Eerie's Statue. It's a 4-mana 7/4, and before you go, holy crap, that's a lot of attack on a 4-mana minion. Battle Cry. Shuffle an Ancient Curse into your deck that deals 7 damage to you when drawn. So if you know about the Iron Juggernaut, puts a bomb in your opponent's deck that they take 10 damage when they draw, and then they just draw their regular card. It's like that, except it's for yourself, so you would never play this in a control deck because you'll blow yourself up, take that damage, and put yourself in lethal range, but you might play this in a hyper-aggressive deck, because if you are able to swing for 7 damage, that is a truckload of damage, and if you're playing an aggressive deck, you might only have like 3 more draws by the point you play a 4-cost minion anyway. I mean, Face Hunter wants to win around turn 6 or 7. So if you have 2 draws, odds of you drawing it, not that high. Even if you draw it, it might not matter because your opponent always has to focus on your board. So you can end a Face Hunter game with pretty much like 25 or 30 HP easy. So the 7 damage you take, not really relevant. However, getting a 7/4 on the board has some potential. One downside, of course, doesn't have charge, so your opponent does get the opportunity to respond to it. Also weak to BGH, so if you do play it in a deck where it's the only BGH target, you might be pretty sad when it gets BGH'd, and then you end up taking 7 damage later on anyway. But it's an interesting option for aggressive decks, but clearly it's an aggressive card. Okay, next card, Fossilized Devilsaur. If you control Beast, gain Taunt, it's 8/8 for 8 mana. This card is bad. Unless maybe you're playing Arena, then it's okay. It's kind of like a War Golem, just 1 more mana and 1 more stats on both sides. If you control Beast card is irrelevant because you're not really going to be playing a turn 8 Beast deck where you're just trying to get up to this really late game where you can just stomp all over everything. And even if you did, Taunt isn't really worth a conditional effect. When you talk about conditional effects, you're talking about like Blackwing Corruptor, deal 3 damage to a targeted minion on the field. Really strong stuff. Gaining Taunt is like, who gives a crap? I mean, just by playing this, you open yourself open to BGH, you slow down your deck, and the decks that do play Beasts are pretty much Hunters and maybe Druids. Not really a card that's such Beast synergy. And then it's just an 8/8 for 8 mana, and you know, even an 8/8 with Taunt, like an Ironbark Protector, that's not played outside of like a basic deck. So if you were playing Druid, you just play Ironbark Protector, and you wouldn't play that because it's a subpar card to other options, and it's BGHable. And if you were playing a Hunter, you wouldn't play an 8 mana minion anyway, because if you're on turn 8 and you have to play this, you probably already lost the game anyway. And on top of that, you could just put King Crush in for 1 more mana and then charge for 8 damage. King Crush, should point out, also a card that's not really played. So it's just a pretty trashy card in general. Wobbling Runts. 6 mana, 2/6, Death Rattle, summon 3 2/2 Runts. The other day, while I was watching BlizzCon, I kind of did the math on this. So it is going to effectively give you the stats of a 8-12. You compare that to Savannah Highmane, and Savannah Highmane gives you the stats of 10 attack, 9 health. So an 8-12 versus a 10-9 actually makes Wobbling Runts really high up there on the stats line. Like, if you're playing more control where you don't just want to push for 6 damage, then this has, the potential to have stats which are better than a Savannah Highmane in total, not by itself. Because what makes Savannah Highmane better than this, aside from being a beast, is the fact that you can push for 6 damage. Your opponent has to respond to it. This card has the weakness of only having 2 attack. So pretty much 9 out of 10 times, your opponent's not going to trade into this. They're just going to say, okay, you have 2 damage on the field, whatever. I'll wait for you to trigger it for yourself. But in a really long, drawn-out game, Wobbling Runts can actually have some potential. If you taunt it up and your opponent doesn't have the silence, that kind of hurts your opponent a lot, because then they trigger the 3 runts to come out. Is it going to be played? I think it is a card that could see some play. I kind of feel it's more of a control defensive card. You probably want to taunt it up somehow. So maybe it could fit somehow into like a handlock deck. Yeah, but handlock is already pretty tight for cards, so I don't know. It's an interesting option, especially for those who don't have all the cards, because it does have a lot of stats on there. I'll give it that, but that's all it's got, and it's a slow card. Next up, Ubisoft Sentinel. Another card that kind of goes in that Death Rattle potential kind of deck. 5 mana for 4, weak stats. Death Rattle, give a friendly minion +3/+3. You can kind of compare it to Dark Cultist, which is a 3/4, 3 mana that gives a friendly minion +3 health when it dies. That, of course, is a priest card. And this, of course, comes with the +3 attack as well, but with weaker stats. Is it good? You basically have to be playing a deck, I think, where you can guarantee that the effect's going to go off. Like you're playing Nerubian Eggs, so your opponent doesn't want to run into your minions, or Hunted Creepers, or just a ton of Death Rattle everything, Piloted Shudders, really sticky boards. And could also be better if you happen to be playing Baron Rivendare. If your opponent can't clear all your minions, then they're not going to kill the Ubisoft Sentinel, which means you play Baron Rivendare and you get 6/6 of 3 stats, which is quite insane, actually. I think it requires a very specific kind of deck. Does have some potential. It does have some potential, because you get that Death Rattle effect off, and it's effectively a 7/7 for 5 mana. Split between 2 effects, but still 7/7 of stats. Okay, next up. Camilla Bot Battle Cry. If you control another mech, discover a mech, which means basically pick from 1 of 3 and add it to your hand. 4 mana, 3/4. So it's kind of like selectively drawing a card as a 4 mana 3/4, which is reasonable. If you're playing a mech deck, I think this is actually a really solid card, especially if you're trying to just have enough steam to bring you into the late game. Maybe it helps get you a specific mech, which would be really good at that point in the game. Maybe you need some firepower, like a Fel Reaver, let's say, or maybe you need a trigger for your Goblin Blast Mage, like a Clockwork Gnome, something you can play on turn 5. The Discover effect does open you up to potential. It's hard to say which is better, drawing a card or Discover. I'm sure people will do the math on it at some point. Probably drawing a card still, though. Okay, next card, Tomb Spider. 3/3 attack, or 3 attack, 3 health, 4 mana, beast, battle card, discover a beast. So you kind of notice with these Discover cards that the effect of Discover is worth about 1 mana by Blizzard standards. So it's kind of like combining a minion with tracking for cards that aren't in your deck. Which has the advantage of being really unpredictable, but the disadvantage of probably not being as good as a card from your deck, considering that the cards in your deck are specifically for that constructed purpose. Unless you're playing Arena, then Discover probably becomes better than Draw. Now, the 3/3 Discover Beast, it's interesting. I think this is more of a Beast Druid card than it is a Beast Hunter card, because with Hunter, you want to be aggressive as possible, and adding extra cards to your hand is actually kind of slow. Anti-synergy with Quick Shot may be better if you're playing the 1 minute Skype. Maybe better if you're playing the mid-range kind of deck. I think it is a pretty decent card. Might make it into some kind of deck. It doesn't have to be a beast deck either. You could just play it as a 3/3 that discovers a beast. But probably better with the beast synergy, considering it's a beast that also gets you a beast. But it is a slower card. Jeweled Scarab. Discover a 3-cost card for 2 mana, 1/1 stats. The stats suck, but what's nice about this card is that it guarantees gives you something to play on turn 3. Unless all 3 of those cards happen to be extremely situational spells or something like that. The downside is you play this and you basically throw away your board tempo on turn 2. I feel if you're going to be playing Jeweled Scarab, you probably want to play like a Zombie Chow deck so that you can at least win turns 1 and 2, and then on turn 2, you're free to actually play the Jeweled Scarab without really giving anything away, and then you have another card in your hand. You get that card draw, you get that card advantage. It's good for control, good for slower decks, or also good for fatigue. So I think it's a card which could see some play. Also worth mentioning, it is a beast, so has synergy with cards like Houndmaster. Houndmaster usually pretty good on 1/1s. Okay, next card, Huge Toad. 2 mana, 3/2, beast. When I first saw this card, I thought it was the exact same thing as a Flame Juggler, just a beast, but it's actually a death rattle effect to deal 1 damage to a random enemy. Which I think compared to Flame Waker is actually, well, it's sometimes good, it's sometimes better, and it's sometimes worse. It's better if you're going to kind of use it on your turn, kill 1 minion off by trading the Huge Toad in, and then you try to rely on that 50/50 to knock away the other minion. Oh, and the stats are actually 3 attack, 2 health. Flame Juggler is 2 attack, 3 health. So it's a flip of how it works. But if you get to control the Death Rattle, I kind of feel like the Huge Toad might actually be better in that circumstance. It's worse in the circumstance where your opponent just, say, swings at it with a Fiery War Axe and then just takes an extra damage to his face. Which actually wouldn't be bad in itself, because then it's like the minion still did 4 damage, which is usually about what a Knife Juggler does, 4 damage or so. And it's a common, so you can use it with Beast Synergy as well. It's an option. It's definitely an option for decks like Beast Druid, where they don't really have that many great beasts to choose from, and this is another pretty decent card that's kind of a good option. I think in Arena it's going to be a solid card, though. I mean, anything that's a 2-drop that's a 3/2 that also has an extra benefit on top of that, pretty good. And the last card, Murloc Tinyfin. I think this is the 3rd 0-mana minion in the game, the first being Wisp and Training Dummy, Target Dummy. 0 mana, 1/1 Murloc. Now, you might think that this is kind of a ridiculous card and as bad as Wisp, but the thing is about Murlocs is that they have synergy. So if you do the Cold Light Seer, you can make this a 1/3. If you have a War Leader, then suddenly it will become a 3/2. You play both of those, and it's a 3/4 for 0 mana. Of course, relies on you playing the synergy. Does have the potential to, if you're playing the Shaman Murloc deck, to use that the Cult Master for Murlocs. But the thing is, that really hasn't been played. It's not really considered a super great card, because Murloc's about aggression, not about drawing more cards, necessarily. That can change, and that depends all about how you want to play your decks. That said, is it actually a good card? If you're going to be playing 0 mana minions, I think you got to have a ton of card draw. So maybe it's better if you actually are playing the Shaman version with the Cult Master for Murlocs. I think where it's best in the Shaman deck is where you play the new Shaman 7-cost spell. Every Fin is Awesome. Gives your minions +2/+2. By playing Murloc Tinyfin, not only do you get the +2/+2 on the Murloc, making it a 3/3 for 0 mana, but you actually reduce the cost of the spell by 1 mana. So in that circumstance, it becomes a -1 mana 3/3, which is actually insane. Can you afford to save Murloc Tinyfin to that point in the game where you can do your cheese combo? Maybe. Kind of hard to say. Or maybe you get one of these off of a Neptulon or something like that. Could be good. Seems pretty legit in the Shaman version, at least. I'm not really sure where it would fit into the Paladin version. Oh, if you're playing Divine Favor in the Paladin version, that could be good. Then you just play a super aggressive deck that probably wouldn't actually run the anything can happen, to be honest, because, I mean, you don't really want to synergize that with Murloc Tinyfin and get a 1-1. You want the good Murlocs, not the 1-1s. Yeah, okay, those are two possibilities anyway. Now, we did miss a few tokens, or did we? No, we didn't. So, just to kind of refresh, Roaring Torch is a 3-mana fireball, effectively, but you get that off of the new mage card, Forgotten Torch, which is 3 mana, deal 3 damage as a mage spell, and then adds this to your deck where you can draw it. Map of the Golden Monkey, of course, brings out the Golden Monkey, replaces your deck and hand with legendary minions, also a 6/6 taunt. Problem is, really inconsistent to play Elise Starseeker, get this, and then the Golden Monkey. Of course, everybody's been mentioning that. And then Cursed, of course, just goes back to that Warlock card where you pay 2 mana to put Cursed in your opponent's hand, and they take 2 damage until they pay 2 mana of their own to discard it. So that's all for the set for, what's it called again? League of Explorers, which is coming out next Thursday. And what do I think overall about these cards? There's some cards here which are actually really good. Mounted Raptor seems like it could be viable. Could also be pretty viable in a Beast Druid. Explorer's Hats. I wouldn't say it's one of the better ones, but Dart Trap, really good for Face Hunter. Ethereal Conjurer, more options for mid-range or late-game control mages or fatigue mages. Forgotten Torch, another good spell, I think. Kind of deal with something on turn 3 and then later on have a 3-mana fireball in your deck. That's pretty good. Keeper of Alderman, another card in the arsenal of Control Paladins, which is just growing more and more intense. Just kind of got to remember, how slow can you play your Paladin decks, although they have all the cards that like Priest has tons of cards for control too, but how slow can you play in the metagame? Very much depends on how many hunters there are. Entomb, really fun Priest card. I'll be playing it. I'll probably run one of in a deck until I feel that it's actually not as good as I thought it was. Unearthed Raptor and Tomb Pillager, very solid rogue cards, and does kind of open the possibility of a Death Rattle Rogue deck. Also, should notice this Battle Cry effect, you can double that with Brand Bronzebeard. So you can actually get 2 Death Rattle effects with this, which would be crazy. You get 2 coins when this dies. Seems pretty legit. Pit Snake could be playable. Could slow your opponent down a lot if they have to hero power that. Tunnel Trog, the Mana Worm for Shamans, very solid. Might just straight up replace Mech Shaman. I mean, if you have good minions that don't even require the mech synergy, is doing the mech synergy still worth it? Maybe you still play Whirling Zapamatic, who knows? Whirling Elementals, also pretty good if you want to play a Battlecry Shaman. And Everything is Awesome is an option for Murloc decks. Reliquary Seeker, of course, sucks, I think. Dark Peddler, potential, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be good. Christopher Thom, great for aggressive Warlocks, I think. Fierce Monkey, great for Taunt Warriors. And a lot of interesting cards down here as well. Meno Jackson, still, as previously mentioned, definitely my favorite. Basically having a Tree of Life that's actually playable, but forces you to play a deck where you have like 1 of every card. And that would make a very different deck that may actually be too bad to not actually be worth running Meno Jackson. You gotta ask yourself, is a 1-mana full heal to your hero worth having to play 29 or 30 different cards? You know, in a fatigue deck, you might be able to get away with it, because a lot of the good legendaries are unique anyway. Fatigue Mage, Anyway, I've been Dark Skeleton. This has gone on long enough, about an hour and a half between both videos. If you watched to this point, good on you. Well, feel free to let me know what you think of all the cards. I'm sure we'll see many changes to the game as these cards come out. BRM created new entire archetypes like Dragon Priest, which was crazy, and actually pretty much became the only viable priest deck. Well, yeah, only viable priest deck that people actually play. Keep an eye out for things like Death Rattle Rogue, Control Hunters that use Surfin, Gurgle to get rid of their hero power. I'd do it. I'll do it. I will make that deck, guaranteed. Maybe I'll post a YouTube video. Ooh, Buff Priest. Yeah. You definitely need those Power Word Shields and those Valen's Chosen. Crazy stuff. Alright. Well, once again, thanks again for watching. I've been Dark Skeleton. Until my next video, I will see you then.